Welcome back. We're discussing a new European initiative which came into play on Wednesday, the so-called food facility to get poor countries back on their feet. Will it work, however, as long as those same poor countries, often rich in natural resources, let's not forget, are sometimes on the wrong end of big discrepancies between supply and production? Think about Africa, rich in mineral and natural resources used by the rest of the world, but how much of that comes back to the continent? Good example is something called gum arabic. It's a substance found only in Africa, essential in the production of Pepsi, Coke, makeup, medicine, newspapers, currency notes. 42,000 tonnes of the stuff is produced every year, almost exclusively in Sudan. And while the price of a tonne has halved from $5,000 2 years ago, its value on the world market is at least 20-fold. Another example, you see it there, hibiscus leaf, bought from countries like Sudan and Egypt. The harvest value, $250 million a year. The value of some of these products that you see, the final products, refreshments, medicines, $35 billion a year. The huge discrepancy shows two things. One, a major flaw, obviously, but also a window of opportunity. Instead of outsiders coming in to use a country's resources, what about using, or in effect training and employing the local population to help them, as we've been saying, stand on their own 2 feet? Still with us, our guests in Brussels, Stefano Manservisi, in London, Jan Randolph, and also in Brussels is Alexander Pollock. Gentlemen, thanks for staying with us. And I know this second half topic might seem a little bit off topic, but I think it's linked as far as taking money forward and taking aid forward. Let's go back to Stefano Manservisi in Brussels. To have a truly meaningful aid package, wouldn't it be best to couple what you've done, putting the money into the aid agencies to take it directly to the countries, but coupling it with contributions from those countries? Is that what the European Commission wants to do in the end?
Well, I think that you raise a very important issue which was discussed at length during the Doha conference last December, which is the question of which kind of partnership for development. I mean, we try to explain and to practice as much as possible a new paradigm which is from donorship to partnership. Donorship means, to be dependent from aid and to receive and therefore to be accountable just about spending. Partnership is something which is a bit more sophisticated because it implies there are duties and rights on both sides. I think that in the present crisis, it is particularly important to understand that, yes, our partner countries need much more policy space, indeed. I'm in favor, and that's the reason why I believe strongly that the future of development aid or partnership is much more in budget support and working per outcome and objective rather than on conditionalities. But on the other side, it is also true, as it was said in Doha last December, that there are fiscal reforms which must be done at the level of our partner countries. They have to mobilize their domestic resources. There are now countries which are earning a lot of money that they could also be invested for development for themselves and in the regions. I think that there is the question of taxation system. There is the question of redistribution. And I think that all this should be part of this new, let's say, way of doing development, which is not just something from the north to the south, but which is something that, as you said before, is keeping all of us together on the same boat. And you mentioned the prices of the lost value on many commodities or raw materials. But let's concentrate on something that you didn't mention, but which is the real common good, which is climate change, which is how to manage this unique and common elements of the world, which is how to exploit in a sustainable way this world, how to combat together climate change, for which the North is responsible, certainly not the South, but where unfortunately either we are able to establish a pact in order to deal with that, or we'll sink altogether. So this is the new paradigm, and therefore I think that I think that things and decisions must be taken at the country level, and we should decrease all the conditionalities, which in reality are procedures, which is also waste of money, but also to have on the other side the firm capacity of respecting also objective of good governance, because this is crucial, increasingly crucial, important. Without good governance, and we can put all the money we want, and they can put all the money they can, but there will be no development. And now crisis is underlining that clearly.
It's the key, isn't it, Jan Randolph, as we've heard, that there's this governance and making sure it all goes to the right place. And I guess, again, it's a point I made with you in the first half, but I'll make it again. It's having the trust and wanting countries wanting to go in to give money to know that it's actually going to go to the right place.
Absolutely. I think the aid business, if you like, has been around a long time, and there's always going to be questions about the quantity of aid and the quality of aid. You know, how efficient is it? Is it doing a job? Ultimately, what we're talking about is sustainable development. But even if you take the aid business, even if you designed better quantity, better quality aid programs, it can never be an independent growth engine. We've got to think about, on the other hand, the risks attached to why private sector, for example, doesn't engage more with Africa. You know, there are a lot of risks which undermine development. We've seen countries with great promise, like Zimbabwe, and the whole development project, and it's very piece by piece. You build on it very slowly. It's a very difficult job to make development work, sustainable development work. But it can all be destroyed in a matter of months, days, weeks because of political risks. And it's these things that we need to look at as well. It's making countries more attractive to trade and investment. And I think Africa can learn a lot from the European Union. You know, there was after so many wars, there was this agreement that they had to combine. They had to open up lower trade barriers, allow trade and investment to take place cross-border. And it created a very successful model. And I think Africa can learn from that, need to build around what works in Africa. I mean, we may have to use South Africa, you know, for example.
Let me just jump in. Let me put that, because unfortunately we're running out of time again. I'll put it to Alexander Pollock in Brussels just finally. Is that, can Africa learn something more from what Europe went through previously?
Yeah, and I think it's the other way around as well. I mean, Europe can learn a lot from Africa, and I think two main issues has been, showed, and that are very key on this issue. Taxation, for example. Yes, you need to build strong fiscal policy in Africa, and there are strong civil society organizations and many decision makers in Africa that are all the more than would agree with that. But if you look at taxation, for example, it goes two ways. The European Union itself as well has to clean its taxation policy. Let's take the example of tax havens. It was discussed at the G20. Our calculation that we made is that only last year, $160 billion, dollars, which is far beyond that the all aid, that is $100 billion, was lost in terms of capital flight to developing countries. I'm talking about American, European, sometimes Chinese companies that are going and not paying their tax. So it prevents, developing countries from having the right fiscal policies to put in place and to invest in human capital and to keep and to put an end to aid dependency. And the second one mentioned was climate change. I totally agree with what has been said, yeah? But climate change, we know that the EU itself is contributing to 1/3 of climate change. And when we know the cost, we know that climate change is hitting poor country very hardly. So estimation is like 30 billion a year minimum dollars will be needed to help poor countries to cope with adaptation to climate change. So I guess they are not responsible for that, hence they paid a very high price.
I guess the final thought we have there is that
everyone's... And we would be very happy for the EU and, yeah.
Everyone's got a lot of work to do, not just the donor countries, but those receiving it. Everyone's got a lot to do before any of this can work. My thanks to our guests, Stefano Manservisi in Brussels, Jan Randolph in London, and Alexander Pollock in Brussels.
Thank you.
So, thanks for joining us, and thank you, our viewer, for joining us here on Inside Story from the whole team. Goodbye for now.